Thank you so much for coming. It's such a blessing to be able to share with you some of these ideas. And today is also a day of great blessing because we've had rain. I remember when I moved to New Mexico about 25 years ago, sometimes the weather announcers would say, "You're going to have bad weather, it's going to rain." And because we've been in such a long 20, 30-year drought, you'll notice that we don't say that of the weather reports anymore. And I think it's a function of language in a way. I want to talk a little bit about language because I want to read the whole of the Isa Upanishad. It's quite a short Upanishad. And we have to be careful in understanding and interpreting the translation. Of course, even if it wasn't from another language, we interpret each other when we speak the same language. The meaning of my words may not be how you interpret them. And our own thoughts, we interpret our own thoughts. So interpretation is what language is about in a way, interpreting the world. But we have to be careful because the Isa Upanishad reads almost like a Lord's Prayer, but we have to understand it not as a prayer to an interventionist force outside reality. But that doesn't mean that you can't have that belief. These ideas will help you regardless of the belief because you're heading towards the truth. But it can be read almost when they say Lord or He. There's a part where that says I am He. So we have to understand it by thinking about the language. And I brought actually, I printed out so we can look at it later, some of the opening sentence in Sanskrit, so I can say if we could connect with it. But talking about rain, there's actually a very beautiful love poem. It's very long, written at the same time as the Upanishads, called Meghdut, which is like cloud messenger. There's this angel's fallen from heaven, he's been banished to earth, and he's telling the cloud to carry a message back because his true love still is in heaven. Right? So it's a very beautiful poem, and I'm just saying that because the Upanishads seem austere and it's a lot about monks, but if we understand that they're talking about a world of beauty, and rain in English is often, because it's the language evolved in a country where there's so much rain and storms, that dark clouds were often seen as harbingers of bad tidings. So, but in most other languages, like Sanskrit, dark clouds are a thing of beauty. A woman's hair is compared to dark clouds, like Meghdut, it's full of that imagery. So with that, I was going to say the Kena Upanishad, the second one, actually has a lot of imagery of gods, and it ends with the daughter of the Himalayan god, appearing. So again, you have to be very careful how you interpret that. And some people take it literally. You can check on the web and you'll find many people taking it all literally, that these are gods or it's just Hindu gods. But I don't believe that that's what. Well, we can discuss this, that the Kena Upanishad is talking about. But I remember when I was quite young, I was fortunate to see the Himalayas, and I realized that there's only one word to describe them really, and that I think is celestial, because most peaks you kind of look like that. For the Himalayas, you have to look almost like a look at a plane flying. When those peaks appear, when the clouds part, it looks like they're called abode of the gods. You can see why they use the imagery of the Himalayas. But my point is that we have to be careful with interpretation because meanings change. There are nuances, but they can get compounded. And I think, Maya to me is a very good illustration of that. Maya is the beauty and the alluring world, but we often translate it into English as illusion. So people think then the world is not real. It's illusion, that it's imaginary, and perhaps there's a deeper reality. But to me, Maya was always like a curtain, that you don't see the reality, but it's real. It's a curtain. So if we had translated it perhaps as disguised, the world is disguised, we'd never question whether the world is real or not. But when we think, and I've had this discussion with other friends who say, well, Maya means illusion, which means the world's not as real as, this other reality, but they're both real. So we just see it transient, we see these patterns changing, but that doesn't mean that they're imaginary. This is very real. And I'm not saying that everybody would agree with me, and if you don't agree with me, I'd love to discuss this with you, but it seems to me that by looking, so I was thinking we could translate it perhaps as scintillation, something so bright that you're blinded. So think of the sun, for example. The sun looks to us like a golden disc, but and we can't even really look at it very carefully. But now with the science, we study the light from the sun. We say no, it's actually 93 million miles away. It's a huge ball of gas. There's fusion reactions. It's releasing energy, and charged particles and creating northern lights and giving us energy on this planet. So you say, well, then it's illusion, what I'm seeing. It's a disk. It looks like a round two-dimensional disk. But obviously, the sun is real. It just appears different to us. And I can recall I was actually very fortunate to be in a rainforest working with tribal people. And one of them had a discussion with me, and he said, what is it that never changes in the world? And I told him there's nothing. I was quite young, and I was full of my scientific knowledge. So I told him, everything changes. And he said, no, the sun never changes. I remember we were sitting like deep in the forest, having this long discussion and telling him why it's going to change, but it just takes too long for us to see it change, that even the sun will die one day, all this gas will be burned. And, he didn't quite believe me, but I realized at that time that it's possible to look at the stars as points of light, to see the sun as never changing, and live a rich life, live a rich aesthetic life. And he, of course, cared deeply for the forest. He was tribal, we call them in India Adivasi, so he was a forest dweller. And I realized that someday people will see our explanation for the sun as a ball of gas as illusion. They'll say, oh, they were so wrong. Then they don't understand at all. So it's not. I'm saying when you realize that illusion doesn't mean it's not real, but that it's scintillating. It's blinding us in a way. Then the world is real. That becomes very, very clear to us. So what I was going to share with you is. The starting of the Isa Upanishad, which is the way many people start reading the 10 Principal Upanishads. It says, Om Purnamadaha Purnamindam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, Purn means complete. It's often, that would be the literal translation. Purna means complete, all, like the whole, that is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's the literal translation, but in this context, it's quite different. It's actually the totality that's sublime. So when Purohit Swami, this is a book that I like very much, when they translated it, and you can see many people translate it as the complete. They say the whole is complete. But what those sentences were saying is, this is perfect. And I think perfect is a better way to translate Purn. So Swami and Gate said, this is perfect, that is perfect. Perfect comes from perfect. Take perfect from perfect, the remainder is perfect. May peace and peace and peace be everywhere. So you can see that a lot can change, when you translate it either as complete or whole or perfect, perhaps not as much as when we keep translating it. And that's why when I'll read the rest of it, you'll hear words like Lord and, help me, Lord. So that can, in English, has a very different connotation to us. As I said, you can believe in the same beliefs you have, but what this book I think is saying is that you can progress along this path and be a better person, and that's what the prayer would be, to the better part of your own self. Not to an interventionist force outside nature. The second Kena Upanishad makes that even clearer. So this one says, whatever lives is full of the Lord. Claim nothing. Enjoy. Do not covet his property. Then hope for 100 years of life, doing your duty. No other way can prevent deeds from clinging, proud as you are of your human life. They that deny the self return after death as a godless birth, blind, enveloped in darkness. The self is one, unmoving, it moves faster than the mind. The senses lag, but self runs ahead. Unmoving, it outruns pursuit. Out of self comes the breath that is the life of all things. Unmoving, it moves, is far away yet near, within all, outside all. Of a certainty, the man who can see all existence in himself, himself and all creatures, knows no sorrow. How can a wise man, knowing the unity of life, seeing all creatures in himself, be deluded or sorrowful? The self is everywhere, without a body, without a shape, whole, pure, wise, all-knowing, far-shining, self-depending, all-transcending, in the eternal procession, assigning to every period its proper duty. For your faith, pin your faith in natural knowledge, stumble through the darkness of the blind. Pin your faith in supernatural knowledge, stumble through a darkness deeper still. Natural knowledge brings one result, supernatural knowledge another. We have heard it from the wise who have clearly explained it. They that know and can distinguish between natural knowledge and supernatural knowledge shall by the first cross the perishable in safety, shall, passing beyond the second, attain immortal life. Pin your faith to the seed of nature, stumble through the darkness of the blind. Pin your faith to the shapes of nature, stumble through a darkness deeper still. The seed of nature brings one result, the shapes of nature another. We have heard it from the wise who have clearly explained it. They that know and can distinguish between the shapes of nature and the seed of nature shall by the first cross the perishable in safety, shall, passing beyond the second, attain immortal life. They have put a golden stopper into the neck of the body. Pull it, Lord. Let out reality. I am full of longing. Protector, seer, controller of all, fountain of life, upholder. Do not waste light, gather light. Let me see that blessed body. Lord of all, I myself am He. Life, merge into the all-prevalent, the eternal. Body, turn to ashes. Mind, meditate on the eternal spirit. Remember past deeds. Mind, remember past deeds. Remember, mind, remember. Holy light, illuminate the way that we may gather the good we planted. Are not our deeds known to you? Do not let us grow crooked, we that kneel and pray again and again. So, as I said, it is possible to read this as a prayer to a force outside yourself. But I think the sentence that says, I am He, I myself am saying, of course, that we are that same self. We discussed this earlier also, that we are seeing, we think of the world as created from a oneness that we can't describe in words. Because there is no word for oneness. It's a symbol of things that are separate from each other when we speak in language. So we can experience it, and that's where I think yoga comes into play, because you maintain the posture, you meditate, and I believe even a little bit of meditation on this, even while you're doing shavasana in your regular classes of yoga, would help you, because you can't explain it, but you can experience it. And once you realize to me what they're saying is that you can't be sorrowful, because there's this oneness that is eternal. It is imperishable. And you are made of the same. So, of course, we started with this, we are one with all existence. We said, then how does that translate into how does it change my life? Is that, well, I realize I'm impermanent. That this is not eternal. I am not eternal. I'm a pattern that comes together, made of this oneness that's taking all these forms. It will dissipate. It's like we said, maybe a wave heading towards a rock. It's a wave. So then the rock we see is also a wave. It's not imperishable either. Everything is in this flux that's changing. And we see that the connections between this oneness are different, right? I mean, like I'm connected to my own hand differently, as we talked about, as say perhaps a branch of a tree, but we could reach a state of understanding that yes, when the tree branch is cut for no good reason, it hurts me. And we see that happen to the plant. So we can build the connections greater and greater. We can feel as this, I think, prayer, and it's like I said, the Lord's Prayer, in a way, the Isa Upanishad, it really means a prayer to God, the title of that Upanishad is that yes, if you see all creatures in yourself and yourself in everything, in all creatures, then you can't be sorrowful. Because whatever happens, it's not in essence changed. It's changed to some extent, right? I mean, yes, you say that my connections when I'm dead will be different with the rest of you. But then so will yours with your children, that you'll be a memory. But then you say, yes, but it's not disappeared forever. There'll be no ego, but we'll be part of the same flux, the same existence. We won't have an ego, but we will not have disappeared. This whole pattern will be forming and reforming. And you say, yes, but how does that help me? And so to me, what it's saying is like, remember your past deeds. And to me, it's very clear, and I'm sure that not many Hindus, people who learned this when they were young, would agree. And I'm looking forward to your discussions. But to me, the past deeds are in this life, not from a birth before. Because what happens is, like I said, illusion is often seen, Maya seen as something imaginary. People see the past deeds as from a previous birth. But it's very clear that ego does not last from one birth to the other. So you say, well, but then I'm going to be born as a cockroach or perhaps as an animal. And I always thought it's an allegory, because clearly being born as a dog may not be such a bad thing. Dogs are very blessed creatures. I see that. And so I say that what they're saying is that you'll be born tomorrow, you'll feel bad if you do bad things today. That's the deeds that I'm paying for. When I was 16, what I did, I paid for today. Or if I remember then, and this is actually something I think we should also think about, is that we're not determined by those past deeds, because what happens today casts a shadow back, right? And then changes how you interpret the past. So we're constantly reinterpreting ourselves. So I'm not saying that we're determined and we're trapped in the past, but we are in a sense trapped in the body, right? But we can set the mind free. And that was what we discussed the last time, that the priest that the students have gone to for help, he says, look, I was born into a womb, I was trapped in this 100-gated, iron-gated prison, but I set myself free like a hawk. The gods trapped me. And gods in that sense were forces of nature. And that, in essence, is the second book that I think explains this more clearly, where you see that they're not talking about something transcendental, something outside nature. And after we discuss the Kena, maybe we'll come back even to the Isa Upanishad, because they both go quite well together. This one is full of questions. It's too long to read, but I would encourage you to read it yourself. You can find, as I said, the book on Amazon.com. You can find other translations also, and many are free. And you don't have to read all the ritualistic material that sometimes comes before and after. I'd say skip it. As Swami engaged, which was very wise. But this one talks about at whose command. That's what it is, the Kena Upanishad. What moves me? What directs this life force? That's the question. And the answer often times at that time, because they were writing, first was an oral tradition and then later was written, but there were existing religions full of rituals and many gods. In fact, the Greek pantheon, the Persian pantheon and the Vedic pantheon are almost identical. So there's a god who throws lightning bolts, there's a god of wind, there's a god of fire. It's almost there, one-to-one correspondence. And these books were written at that time, and people believed in them. So the second half of the Kena Upanishad says that the gods are very proud. They have won a great victory. And the self, the Brahman, the spirit, translated here, appears before them. And the gods then are like surprised. Who is this? That's the story. Who is this being that they see, which is the spirit of the oneness, comes in a human form to the gods. And the gods then tell Agni, the god of fire, or Vulcan, go find out who that person is. And Spirit asks Agni, well, who are you? What do you do? He said, I can burn anything. So Spirit throws a straw on the ground and says, burn it. And the God of fire cannot burn it. And then he comes back, he says, I can't figure out who this person is. The second person is the God of wind, Vayu. The other gods say, go find out who that person is. And he goes and the Spirit says, what can you do? And the Vayu said, I can blow away anything. And he throws a straw on the ground and says, well, blow this away. And the God of wind cannot. So then the God of light goes to him, and Spirit disappears and turns into this beautiful goddess of well, actually she appears out of the sky. She's the daughter of the Himalayas. And the goddess tells him that this is Spirit, the oneness of everything. And so then the gods realize that they are not all powerful. And then the three gods, this triumvirate of light or energy, fire and wind, they start praying to Spirit. That's the story in the Kena Upanishad. I didn't read all of it and said it would perhaps give us less time. I would encourage you to read. So the point of the story to me is that they are saying there are no gods. There is this oneness. The gods are like forces of nature, and then you can use them. You can worship gods if you like, but you have to realize that you are using them as symbols to lead towards a truth that's deeper, that is what is called the everlasting, the imperishable. And this oneness of everything, contemplating it and living your life so that you come closer and closer to experiencing this oneness, to realizing that at every time, in every moment, which I know is very difficult. I forget it, and I'm sure that all of us are not self-aware at every moment. We react to what's happening around us. So we can then, by understanding this, feel at peace, feel one with the world, feel fearless because you're connected to everything. And you cannot die in that sense, in the deeper sense, that the gods are not real. This is real. That thing which we are made of, which we cannot really discuss in words, which we could contemplate and experience, think about it and connect, to the beginning, to realize that the beginning is what is now. There is no time, there is no end to this. There is not that it's going to change. Yes, it's changing in form, apparent form, but it's staying constant. And that, if we experience that feeling, that you feel fearless, you will feel like, whatever happens, I'm not saying that whatever happens for the good, but whatever happens is easier to bear, certainly. You can't say that I am doing the right thing, so I'm going to get, and we discussed this last time, and I'm very indebted to the students here who discussed this with me, that perhaps saying right action and reward is not the way to understand this, but it's like what you feel in your heart. And I'm indebted to Alora who said, right action seems like you've set up some dichotomy between good and evil and good and bad, but rather what we feel in the heart. If you look in our heart, which really we have discussed the lotus of the heart, that inside us we are connected to this infinite, because I'm emerging as a phenomena all the time through this interaction of the world. So I would cease to exist if I didn't breathe, if I didn't eat food, if I didn't interact with the rest of the world. And in fact, if the rest of the world was not interacting with me, I wouldn't be this I that I am. I have a history, I speak a certain language, I come from a certain place, we all do, So what I'm saying, trying to say that the fearlessness that you feel comes from this connection, that yes, I am the same power that energizes everything, energizes me. I feel connected to it. I can reach it as an understanding, but in the end, words will fail me. I will experience it. I will meditate and contemplate. And to me, the idea is that how will you lose yourself in this is through devotion, that through the doing what comes from your heart, knowing in your heart, or perhaps also as models, finding teachers, learning from each other, sharing with each other. And that's why I feel I've come here, to learn as much as to share these books. Is we learn and we teach, we interact and we act, and then we become devoted, because that's what the prayer says in the end to me. It's like, remember past deeds, remember what you did, correct yourself, and learn from this. And then, you pray, but it's not, to me, it's clearly not to a God, because they are powerless in front of the Spirit, the oneness of everything, which is imperishable. That's the moral to me of that story, or the meaning, that you pray, but in a sense, you're praying to the better part of yourself, because we have in us the ability to understand and be conscious, to be self-conscious. So when we pray even to this external force, that's what I'm saying, it doesn't matter. If you say, well, no, I have a different belief system, it's fine, because in the end, they're reaching for the same truth, to be better, to live in peace, to live in calmness. And that's to me, that's the idea behind yoga, is that you need to be able to bear these postures, not just at the time when you sit, but to be connected at every moment as you act, as you move in the world. You'll have a posture and a movement through life that will help you understand this connection, feel this connection, so that it becomes real. It can't be discussed or just thought about. So, I'm one with everything, but it doesn't mean anything, right? But if you felt it, you would find yourself able to be more closely connected. Just the way we are connected to the people we love, for instance, our children or our parents. We would feel connected to everything through love and through devotion. So I look forward to your comments on this. But this is, to me, the crux of the Isa and the Kena Upanishads. You will feel this oneness and you'll be fearless and you'll end in devotion. Thank you so much. We don't have to go in order, actually, if anybody has, or I could read sorry.
Well, I really like the idea that the Upanishads seem to paint in general about this need for us to, and in the Yoga Sutras as well, that there's always this stillness versus this movement, and we're always needing to accept the changes that come with the movement while we're seeking the stillness within ourselves. And I think that the idea of reinterpreting ourselves every time we make a choice, or every time we say something or do something, and that it kind of all ties it together. At this point in the lectures, it's kind of giving me a better ability to step back and kind of look at everything in a bigger picture sort of way. So I just really appreciate taking the time to explain that.
Thank you. Yes, please.
When you say, for me, it's opening the heart center to get that connection on that level, because that's when I experience it. And you said a couple of words, but one word that comes to my mind is harmony. So and just give feedback. When you're connected to the flow or to the oneness, then your actions and thoughts and speeches and feelings feel in harmony with life, I guess.
Yes.
Anyway, I just wanted to put that out.
That's
my thoughts.
No, that's very true. That is the right word, I think, harmony.
Right, like
and some people say synchronization, or, in the flow.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
so like
in harmony. It's music.
You're with it. You're like
yes.
energetically connected or whatever.
Right.
Through the reinterpretations of your thoughts and actions.
To me, it's more of a feeling. So that, let's say, I have a thought or do an action, and if that feeling isn't there, then then if I'm smart, then I'll say, oh, I'm not open enough, or I'm not, blind, or something like that. But, so to me, the feeling is more of the barometer of what I'm doing. So my causing the reading. So, for example, today, I was feeling unhappy, but it was a hyper, and I know that that's not in total alignment. I mean, it's better to be depressed, but, and so I had that kind of, knowing that I had something to refer to, it's like I could think about it and try to calm myself down. Anyway, and then feel more. And then just listening to you, like listening to the words and to the understanding, you're coming from a place that sets me more into the heart space, into being open and more aligned.
I'm so glad, yes. I think harmony is very right, because we talked about language, to me, then to have language, to have meaning, we can't be discordant, we can't be a cacophony of sound, because we wouldn't be able to communicate. We have to have a dialogue. Otherwise, we couldn't communicate, so it's true. It seems to me that when we lose that ability, then it's war. The war emerges from not being in harmony, not having dialogue, not having meaning and consensus, and that doesn't mean that we can't have conflict. We can disagree, it seems to me, but war is actually the end of conflict. And the world is always one step away at this time. I don't know if you all heard the news today, but Russian troops may go into the Ukraine. So who knows? War has happened and could happen again. I think it's because we lose the harmony. That's why it's important. I think when it says the opening line says peace, peace. Be everywhere. So it's the tragedy in a way is that not only that we end, but that we forget this oneness, and then for gain we end up, in violence and a war. A world of violence, which of course, this time, these books were written at a time of, where there was actually quite a lot of ending of violence, I'd say. So we can't forget the historical context, because India is a subcontinent, as we often describe it, because of the Himalayas. It's cut off from Asia, with a few narrow passes. The other triangle is ocean. So at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of naval fleets coming to invade. That happened in the 1600s. So what I'm saying is, like, by the time these were being written, and to me, it's always been very interesting that the king who really espoused Buddhism had conquered all the country. They say he had a transformation, in his last battle, which I think is kind of interesting, because now he's promoting non-violence, right? So that's a good thing to have non-violence when you've conquered everybody. Right? Then you say, okay, let's all live in peace. But my point is that, we have to place them in the historical context. That's why I think if we translate them today, when we say I and he, I'm sure, you would forgive them, because they were writing, and it's being translated by Yeats and Purohit Swami, in the 30s. So they are writing it. They assume that history, what we've come to realize today, that he need not be human. But they use the male pronoun for, as including men and women. I think we'd be different today if we translated it. And unfortunately, in Sanskrit, actually, a lot to me, anyway, the male and female is because all nouns are male and female, like in many other non-English languages, all nouns have a gender. So if you take it literally, they may be saying male, but you can also read it as human. When you translate it in English, we are forced to say I and he, and spirit, and they did a very good job, I think. But you can find many other versions of this, and I think they have to be rewritten, which we shouldn't be afraid of doing. So I went on too long, but I'm just agreeing absolutely with you that it's harmony that we seek, and I think yes. Thank you for sharing that. Please, would you share your thoughts with us?
I'm just thinking about thinking, I guess. When I think, or when I try to explain something like that, that feeling of oneness, it's gone. So I can't really rest in my true nature if I have any conceptual thing going on. So it goes back to the experience, and that's where I want to be there. But I was raised in, as we all were, cultures where concepts and words are how we make our living and how we relate to everything. So it's a sort of a battle for me, the conceptual thing, the spinning.
Yes.
But when that's gone, it's just like I can rest in the oneness, I guess you would call it. Let's see this word. So,
Yes, no, that's very true. In fact, I think when it says, I read the part about being blind if you mistake the natural and the supernatural, but you have to understand the natural, and you have to do what you have to do, to live this life. You have to do your duty. You're born into a certain set of circumstances, and you already made some choices. So every day you are born into some circumstance from birth and some from your choices. So I agree with you that it's very difficult. It seems to me, of course, there are some methods to still your mind. You can concentrate, you can focus on your breath, and you can contemplate this, but you can't give up words completely. They will always be there with you. Otherwise, you lose a sense of self. I think it's possible, though. I think, to me, I've come closer and closer, but never fully attained it. But once when I was married, it seemed to me I was much younger then, so perhaps my mind could be more focused. I had less baggage. But I remember thinking that just like the lights shining to us, the body is a feeling also. It's a body feeling. It's just a constant. So the light comes and registers in the brain. But this feeling of having a body is just that you can lose it. Not that the body's not real, but your mind can float so that you could lose that. And it happened to me momentarily, I have to say, but and I actually was afraid of it. At first I thought, I can't go there. I'll turn to a vegetable, I thought, which was a mistake, but now I realize that you sink and come back. You don't want to lose your sense of self forever, because then you can't function in the world. Then you attain, what the state of bliss, right? You leave the body. So they say the final samadhi. You can leave the body and be one with everything. But I don't know if that's to me. I don't believe that that's to be taken literally. Though I'm sure many people would disagree with me. That they say yes, there are saints, and I've been actually to shrines where there are saints who are said to have taken the cross-legged posture and then died, of their own free will. And then their bodies were buried and they become shrines. So they are revered by everybody. And they say, yes, they actually left the body, but they have not left this universe. I don't believe that, but I'm saying, to me, that's like a symbolic state of mind, a state of bliss that you head towards, where you lose this sense of body. So in that sense, it's a death. But I agree with you, it's difficult, and it's not going to happen, for you all the time. But I think the benefits, there'll be progression towards it. And when you come back to the world, because you've taken the time to think about it, you will function in a way that helps you. You feel calmer, you won't react negatively to some negative thing that happens to you. Yes?
Moment-to-moment resurrection.
Yes, moment-to-moment resurrection. Yes, that's very true.
Something else to say. I feel like I say too much. But, when Alora gave her introductory lecture to the Nidra Yoga, I felt that her words, she was open to the flow. It was like, so the words came through in a way that wasn't thinking. It was very poetic, and there was like a certain energy to it. So I guess, so what I'm saying is that the words can come from a different place and not get in the way, I think. And I thought that was really an example, really beautiful when I heard it. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that's right. Yes, I see that. In fact, I remember having a discussion where, the way clothes are. I mean, you say, well, clothes are beautiful too. They adorn you, and at the same time they hide something. Right? We wear clothes because we're afraid of showing ourselves. But at the same time, it's like they make us beautiful. So what I'm saying is, yes, the words are a disguise, and at the same time, because they're preventing you, in a sense, from experiencing this oneness, but they're beautiful at the same time. So perhaps, I don't know if I call it, but I'm saying that the words, because they are dividing the world up, need not be completely a hindrance to that feeling of oneness. Whatever your thoughts are can help you reach there also. Am I correct? Am I understanding what you're saying?
A little.
I'm trying to rephrase it.
I think when, another way that I hear it go with words, is the more open the heart is to the experience, then things can come through and express, but with a deeper understanding, it's from a different place, like there's a different energy that you can feel when someone is speaking, when there's like cosmic intelligence coming through a person, rather than their left brain thinking. So it's not really the words, it's kind of like where it's coming from, something. That's the best way I can explain. When you hear a beautiful singer like, oh gosh, or art, some of it is divine. You can feel the divinity coming through.
Yes, no, that's very true.
So don't give up. No, just
I just wanted to clarify. You said something about when we feel the oneness, we will have devotion, and then there was something in the end, or is devotion what comes in the end after experiencing the oneness?
I think to me, I was talking about devotion in the sense that the actions that you take, the meditation that you do will not be sufficient. Just doing meditation, for instance, by having living a life that is quite opposed to these ideas, of feeling oneness, feeling that you're one with all creatures, and then perhaps, destroying something that is so beautiful and so precious to you. You can't do that. So that's to me is the idea that you will be doing this with a sense of devotion, because you won't feel this oneness if your actions are not expressing this feeling. And that's why, to me, the prayer ends with devotion. Saying, "Help me, to do the right thing. Help me." But I'm struggling a bit, perhaps, because that transition takes a lot of thinking and a lot of practice. And I haven't done that myself, So where will that devotion come from? Because we can understand this intellectually, but then do we live it? And I think that's where devotion comes in. To be devoted to this practice, to these ideas, and to then live them.
I like that you brought up the gods, and you talked about them as forces of nature, but like things that we can use to help direct us or guide us, but not they're kind of the end all. Because I think I can sometimes get confused with all these gods and goddesses, and so what's their play? What's their role? Because often that's not what we're discussing within yoga, often it's about turning inward. So I appreciate that you just addressed that they're a guide, they're a tool to be used, not necessarily the focus.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think that these gods and goddesses are symbols. They are not to be taken literally as a force. But this is like the Himalayas, and it's a concrete representation and a very beautiful representation of this oneness. So as I said, when you look at them, they're celestial. When you look at nature, it's beautiful. When you see these forces, they are awe-inspiring. But they are not to be seen as something outside nature, a force that you pray to, that if you do a certain ritual in a certain way, then you will win some reward from these gods that are watching you and will help you. You have to find it in yourself, you live right, you feel better, you understand the world. But yes, these are not real gods and goddesses. And I think that some people say that actually the Upanishads are like an atheist philosophy almost. It's not spiritual, but I think it is spiritual. When the more you read them and reread them, you'll see they're deeply spiritual. But it's not a transcendental spirit that's outside nature. It reveres nature and reveres the world that we are made of. It says, I am he, or I am that. I am the Lord. So it's difficult if you think of it as something separate. But then you say, okay, there's still a possibility that there is a God outside, and I can still feel one with everything and revere everything, be devoted to life. Because I see that happening when you see how Christian saints live their lives, and even if they were not real people, the stories about them. Then they say, well, they believed in a God outside nature, but they lived the life the same way. So I think it leads you to the same truth. It need not be separate or right or wrong. You say, yeah, but people kill each other over religion. That, I think, is a mistake that has many historical reasons and not blamed just on the way of thinking of the philosophy. But I agree with you. It's very confusing because there are so many gods and goddesses, and that to me is the purpose of the Kena Upanishads, saying that they can't blow away a straw.
Yeah.
They're not real. Thank you all so much.